Welcome to MySecurityTV and our Tech and Sec Weekly. My name's Chris Cubbage. I'm the Executive Editor and Director with MySecurity Media. Today we're joined by Danny Lessem, the Chief Executive Officer with ELMO. Danny, thanks for joining us.
Always a pleasure, Chris.
Thank you, mate. Look, we're going to be looking at the ELMO's Employee Sentiment Index, the June quarter, and one of the findings that came out was employees are more than willing, about 60% of employees surveyed were willing to have mandatory COVID vaccinations. And I thought that was a good one in terms of this particular index and the survey, and also the environment here, particularly on the east coast of Australia in Sydney. We're in lockdown. There's a lot of conversations around vaccines. And then also from a cybersecurity context that we have, I also wanted to cover off, this index is an interesting one in terms of how employees are feeling in the workplace. And so we deal a lot with insider threat, the risk of employees within corporations and enterprise as well. So I think it's just something worth to consider and get a watch over. Danny, maybe we'll start with you and just your CEO of ELMO, maybe introduce us to ELMO, and then we'll a bit of the background to these quarterly surveys that you do, and then we'll dive into some of the key findings for the audience.
Great, Chris. So just an introduction to ELMO and my role at ELMO. So ELMO is a SaaS or software as a service offering, and we cover through human capital management solutions to manage people and process, and also payroll and expense management. So it's a very wide convergent solution. It is all cloud-based. It's always been cloud-based, and we reach tens of thousands of organizations across Australia, New Zealand, and the United Kingdom. And it is a fast-growing cloud-based solution. We do focus on mid-tier size organizations as well as small businesses. So in terms of the history, I'm one of the founders of ELMO, established the company back in 2002. So we're not a startup. We're really a mature organization, but still in rapid scale-up mode.
It never really stops, does it, Danny? You just you say we're not a startup, but we're always scaling up. That's what business is, isn't it?
Working in technology, if you're not scaling up, then you're irrelevant. So I'm glad to say we're still in rapid scale-up. Yes, Chris.
Fair enough. Now, just on the report and the idea of this particular interview, again, it is on I think we put it on the Australian Security magazine, but we'll put a link in the show notes. But it was just to highlight this particular report. Lonergan Research surveyed 1,039 Australian workers aged 18 and over between 17th of June to 27 June 2021. Research was conducted through a 17-question online survey. And what are some of the survey findings I'll put up, but it does break down to the state. So obviously all states of Australia were covered, and then also the ages, and about a breakdown of 54% male and 45% female. Now, in terms of the actual perception, and this was the one that grabbed me, there's perceived security, there's job security, economic security, industry security, and organisational security. Danny, if you can, maybe just a breakdown on what those breakdowns are for in terms of job, economic, industry, and organisational, and what type of picture that might be painting.
Yeah, so firstly, just talking about the Employee Sentiment Index, this is a quarterly survey. So we conducted the survey in the previous quarter. So this is the second in a series. So it's really important to benchmark the findings against the earlier findings. So when we're talking about job security, what we can see across organizations, across industries or verticals, there has been a deterioration in job security. And Australian and New Zealand workers are feeling less secure about their employment, about the prospects of their industry and the businesses they work in now. And they also have a dimmer view in terms of the general economic outlook. Now, this is not occurring in isolation. We also ask questions about their attitudes towards COVID-19 and COVID-19 in the workplace. And we can see a direct link between the sentiment of employees and the current circumstances of where we sit in dealing with this pandemic. So just with the advent of the Delta variation of the virus, we see a direct correlation to that, I suppose, dimmer view of job security and economic well-being in the workplace. And I think the most extraordinary finding of this report is 62% of respondents suggested that they would support the requirement of vaccination in their workplaces. And this is testament to the anxiety that Australian workers are feeling about actually catching the virus in their workplaces. So it's a very important finding, and it's obviously that anxiety needs to be addressed. And we're not suggesting that that there needs to be mandatory vaccinations, but more importantly is that Australian workers are very concerned in terms of catching the virus in the workplace. They also are concerned in terms of the effect the virus is having on the economy. And again, just looking at the longitudinal nature of these benchmarking surveys, is that sentiment is affected as soon as we get mandatory lockdowns, as soon as we get border closures. That sentiment is very acute, and Australian and New Zealand workers are feeling quite insecure with the, I suppose, the rollout of the vaccination in the region. So we really have to address that anxiety that people are feeling.
Well, I think it is that timeliness. We did mention it was conducted in June, just about the time that New South Wales went into lockdown. And just I'll have the figures up on the screen at the moment, but that's an 8-point decline from Q1 in the feeling, how Australians are feeling in their jobs in terms of job security. 19% feel secure with the economy. That's an 11-point decline. 54% feel secure within their industry, but that's down 5 points. And 52% of Australians report feeling secure about their organisation, but also down 5 points. And again, that's probably, we'll have links to both of these reports, but it is testament, as you mentioned, of this Delta variant. The other one is feeling burnout is 42% as well. So there's a worker well-being in here, and again, from a security risk management and also business continuity management viewpoint, I think worker well-being and workplace behaviours is something else that this report deals with. It's just that underlying sort of set of circumstances that corporations are in. Maybe if you can touch on, Danny, the worker well-being and workplace behaviours and what maybe trends you were seeing there.
Yes. So first, I'll comment on the timing of the survey is up to the 27th of June. It correlates to, I suppose, the beginning of or just before the beginning of the lockdowns in Sydney, and also apprehension across other states. So just bear in mind that if we ran that survey today, we'd probably get indications of more insecurity in terms of employee sentiment. So that's first item I'll note. In terms of employer well-being, it is very concerning. So particularly that metric about the feel of burnout, and again, compared to the feedback we had at the beginning of the year in the previous survey, this has increased. So employee burnout. So particularly with now we have remote-based learning for children in schools. There's a lot of there are a lot of factors which are leading to the burnout. It's not only workplace orientated factors, it is also the weight of remote-based working, and some of the feedback we've got is, well, we can't discern between work time and leisure time. There's an increased stress. There's actually increased workloads, because converse to a lot of people's thinking is you can do a lot more work working remotely with the technology we have than you can do at the workplace without the types of breaks, informal breaks you get in the workplace. So it's one Zoom call after another. This is all leading to that burnout. So it is very concerning. It's very concerning because it does have roll-on effects. It has effects in terms of people staying within their current jobs. So they will look for other jobs where they perceive they'll have less burnout. It also it affects their productivity. So when you're burnt out and stressed, your productivity will lapse. And then quite acutely, especially in this forum, is when we're looking at issues like cybersecurity and in business continuity, is having a burnt out workforce really heightens those risks as well.
Absolutely. So they're not concentrating as they would, as well as their different environments. The other one is it's also interesting. About a quarter are looking at career changes too. It's forcing people or influencing people to think about, is this really what I want to be doing, and what are the other opportunities, and also the impact on various industries in the economy due to lockdown. You know, aviation is a good example, events, those frontline services as well. And again, there's a potential, and there's also pressure coming in because we don't have the immigration happening as well. So the pressure on jobs and availability, there's a lot of hidden kind of interdependencies happening here. And I think, again, it's one of the things I liked about the report is it seems to be picking a lot of that up. Maybe thinking about the career change, are you seeing any particular movement, or is it just kind of measuring that people are thinking about career change? Is it looking at where they may be going?
I think the stresses that are coming through in the current circumstances have got people thinking in terms of their own well-being and in terms of the types of jobs they're doing at the moment. So people are looking to alleviate that stress, and one way to do that would, or at least the perception is, to either change what you're doing or change who you're working for. So either way, this is a major issue for employers. Employers with I suppose, a recovering economy is that they and I suppose additional shortage of skilled workers because of the border lockdowns. Employers need to be cognizant of this burnout and this anxiety amongst the workforce in terms of their business continuity and their ability to take advantage of the macroeconomic recovery coming post-COVID. So the best way that employers can address this is by consulting with their employees, is by identifying the causes of that anxiety and stress, and by actioning policies to deal with it. That's probably the most feedback we get. The consultation needs to be there. And obviously there are challenges in consulting because people are working remote. So how do you do that? You have to adapt. So everything has to be adapted. And of course, the linchpin is in order to facilitate this communication, there needs to be an embrace by employers of new technologies to facilitate collaboration and consultation with remote-based workforce. So it's a very much changing landscape, and it requires a lot of adaptation by employers to meet the challenges that their employees are facing at the moment.
And I think you mentioned technology there, and that's relatively stable. So 68%, which is quite high. So almost 70% of Australian workers believe greater technology will assist them in their role. Quite stable since quarter1. And then 56% of Australian workers believe their skill set is specialised and hard to replace. 4 percentage points down as well. And 2 in 5, so 40%, feel their industry is prone to job losses as well. So the impact of technology, as well as the COVID situation, is also playing a bit of a part here. And maybe let's this is quite a good report, but I think the last one we can stop on was employee priorities, and remuneration and bonus payments is number 1, fair enough. Stability of an organisation is number 2, and then flexible remote working and culture of the organisation are number 4, and I suppose the top 5. So easy and short commute. That's another one that we've definitely seen now. It's kind of embedding itself now as the hybrid work model and working from home. There's some that are adapting quite well to working from home and more comfortable working from home. they've had time to set themselves up now in the workplace, in their home workplace. How are you feeling about that? Is that sort of stabilising from what you've seen? I think these priorities have raised or have risen over the last quarter.
Yeah. Firstly, let's start off with the remuneration packages. So we saw in some industries employees not receiving bonuses because of downturn of that industry or that business, and that's a major issue for working Australians. Is that there is a certain amount of inflation in the economy, and they need to pay their bills, pay their mortgages, etc. So remuneration is top of mind, and Australian workers, it's shown by our feedback, our research, is that they're looking to get adequately remunerated in their roles, and that is a major factor in whether they will remain with the current employer or not. And again, in some industries, there's real skill shortage, so people will move for a better package, and that's because they need to be remunerated to a certain level to maintain their lifestyles. So that's a big item. We'll move on to remote-based working. Again, different experiences in different companies. Those employers or those companies or organizations that have invested in the right type of technology to facilitate effective remote-based working, they've done particularly well in this situation. So they've done well in terms of alleviating anxiety of employees who need to collaborate and need to be heard. They need to have a voice in the organization. They need to be seen, and they need to be appreciated to ensure that they are productive and ensure that they are aligned with the company and that they feel that they've got a future with the company. So it's really about the technology which has been invested in by these organizations. Conversely, organizations that haven't upgraded or adapted their technology to deal with disparate workforces and remote-based working, they've suffered in this situation because they've lost contact with their employees. The employees feel unrecognized, unappreciated, and definitely performance has diminished. So in that situation, employees will look to change organization. So it's a new way of working. It's a way of working which is a hybrid workforce, partly on premises, partly remote, with lockdowns fully remote, and organizations that have invested in the right type of technology to ensure business continuity in that situation have done particularly well. But not all businesses have done that well at this point.
And they may still be struggling a little bit. There's a little bit of issues in the supply chain as well. Some had to adapt to that. But look, thank you so much, Danny. I think just to finish off, the worker vaccine sentiment, we talked about the hybrid workforce. You're in lockdown at the moment. Returning back to the workforce, I think employees need to have trust back into that workplace. 76% agree that the economy will only return to normal if an Australian vaccine rollout is successful. 62% agree employers should require their employees to be vaccinated. 44% feel uncomfortable going into work if my colleagues are not vaccinated. And total agree Australia is on track with its vaccine rollout, 41%. So there's a bit of improvement there as well. So look, the link is in the show notes. It is also on our marketplace as well, the MySecurity marketplace for download. And otherwise, it's something that we'll keep on top of each quarter. I think it's something that we'll monitor. But Danny Lessem, the CEO with ELMO, thank you very much for joining us today on our Tech and Sec Weekly.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks for the opportunity, and look forward to talking to you around the next Employee Sentiment Index report.
Good work. Thank you. Have a good day.
Cheers.